51 years ago, the crash of this aircraft shocked the entire world, as it became known as the greatest miracle, and that's what we're going to demonstrate to you in today's video. The tragedy of the Andes, the mysterious Flight 571. Today you'll find out what occurred in this tragedy, what the miracle was, and much more. Let's go back to October 13, 1972, the year when the Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 was heading from Montevideo, Uruguay, to Santiago, Chile. The aircraft was carrying 45 people in total, a rugby team, some friends, and family members. But halfway through the journey, due to a storm, they had to make a stop in Argentina, where they spent the night. The next day, despite the unstable conditions, they decided to take off. The aircraft then took off, but a few minutes later, it crashed into the Andes Mountains. Some say the crash occurred after the aircraft lost both wings when it hit a mountain, while others say the aircraft had to make a forced landing after encountering severe turbulence. All of this was alleged at the time when there was no investigation. Currently, after several investigations, the exact cause of the aircraft crash has been concluded. Apparently, the crash occurred due to a human error by co-pilot Dante Lagdarara. According to the analyses, the co-pilot thought they were closer to the airport than they actually were, and therefore, confused by the storm, he initiated the landing much earlier than scheduled, which ultimately resulted in the accident. The aircraft ended up colliding with the mountains, and 12 people died on the spot. It all happened amidst heavy snow during a heavy storm, and that's why they weren't rescued immediately. Over the following days, another 17 people died. They didn't survive due to the extreme cold, injuries, lack of food, and all the other difficult conditions to survive on a mountain in the high winter. As a result, the accident became known as the Andes tragedy. But then, what was the miracle? You might be wondering. The miracle is that out of the 45 people on the flight, 16 managed to survive and were rescued. These 16 people endured intense cold amidst snow for 72 days in extreme and inhuman conditions. They were at an altitude of 3,000 meters, and at night the temperature dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius. They had no food, no supplies of any kind, no medicine, and to survive, they had to do the unimaginable, including even cannibalism. One of the survivors of the tragedy was the cardiologist Roberto Canessa, who was only 19 years old at the time. According to him, initially they survived by eating only chocolate bars and other sweets found in the passenger's luggage. The problem came after a few days when the food ran out. At that moment, the survivors started eating anything they could find, including rubber soles, cigarettes, and toothpaste. They didn't know how long they would stay there, whether the rescue would come quickly or not. When hunger became unbearable, someone said the following phrase, "I think I'm going crazy because I'm thinking of eating the bodies of those who have already died." Confronted with the harsh reality, the only alternative was to feed on the remains of the other passengers, including friends and relatives. According to Canessa, the young survivor, at first, people were struggling not to eat the bodies, but by then, they had already eaten even the leather seats of the aircraft. This critical situation made them surrender to eating human flesh. When the case became public, the survivors of the Andes tragedy were subjected to harsh public judgment. Their acts of cannibalism were heavily criticized by the population. Faced with these drastic conditions, the crew of Flight 571 had to make a decision. And you? What would you do if you were in their place? Survivor Roy Harley, who was 20 years old at the time, was essential for the group's rescue. He was studying engineering, and because of his knowledge, he managed to connect a radio to the aircraft's battery so they could hear the news of their own disappearance and find out how the search was going. However, many days after the aircraft crash, they heard over the radio that the search had already been called off. As they found out that no one else was looking for them, they needed to make a decision because otherwise, they would all kick the bucket right there. That's when they decided that they had to stop waiting and start acting in some way, the only way out. So the survivors prepared for weeks and chose two of the most fit people to carry out this mission of seeking help. Fernando Pardo and Roberto Canessa, on December 12th, began their walk in search of help. After 9 days of walking, they managed to find one person, the mule driver Sergio Catalan. They met near an isolated village in Los Maitines, they're in Chile. With that, upon learning of the accident and the survivors, Sergio rode his mule for 10 hours to the commune of Porta Alto in Chile to alert and seek help. It was only then, after 72 days of the accident, that the 16 survivors were rescued. A helicopter was sent to rescue Pardo and Canessa, who were 9 days' walk from the others. and then other teams were sent to rescue the rest of the living crew members. This frightening and touching story has already inspired several movies and series and even books, such as the 1993 film Alive and the Netflix release The Society of the Snow, a film based on the book written by one of the survivors, Roberto Canessa, now on the platform worldwide. It's a tragic story that brings out the dilemmas humankind has to face when in difficult situations. If you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. See you in the next video.